Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. It was an ordinary weekday dinner time. I absent-mindedly sat at the dining room table and watched my two sons, William and Daniel, wolf down their macaroni. William is 15 and Daniel is 14. They always remember to do the dishes and are both keen on sports and other youth activities. At the other end of the table, my wife Emma looks after the family dinner, making sure everyone gets what they want. It would have been a cozy picture from the pen of Norman Rockwell. The boys quickly finished dinner and went out to play street field hockey while it was still dark. I sipped my last sip of iced tea slowly, trying to work up the courage to talk to my wife. She was standing at the sink washing dishes. I got up from my chair and said, "Next time you go to see your lover, don't wear that red dress. You walked into that motel room looking like a $20 a time hooker." She didn't even turn around. As I walked toward the door, I heard a china plate shatter on the floor. I spent the next 2 hours mowing the lawn. Eventually it got too dark and I had to stop. I didn't want to go inside, didn't want to meet her eyes. Cleaning the mower took longer than usual. There was about half a liter of oil left in the tank, which I disposed of. As I tried to throw the empty oil can in the trash, I noticed a tightly crumpled brown paper bag at the bottom of the bin. It contained the red dress and a set of red underwear. There were stains on the panties, but I didn't need to check them, already knowing who had done it. Emma was lying in bed, the door to her room closed. That's just what I want, because I don't want to look her in the eye all day. The day was off from the start. I've suspected Emma of cheating for months. Unwilling to believe this, I tried to ignore it, hoping the feeling would pass. But instead of passing, it's gotten worse. Emma is a fourth-grade teacher. She usually goes to school with the kids. This morning she said she had a doctor's appointment to have her eyes checked, so she called in sick. I left the house around the same time. For the last few weeks, I've been working out of an apartment complex in Harrisburg, about an hour's drive from home. I'm a painter, and when Emma announced that she was going to call in sick, I decided to quietly take the day off as well. I have been painting for almost 20 years. I love this job and do it well. I was doing this when we got married, a job that helped Emma through college. I've always assumed that my wife approved of my career choices, but over the past few years I've noticed some of her comments suggesting the opposite. When she introduces me to her friends, she never mentions my profession. In fact, she seemed to deliberately avoid the subject. She would only speak up if someone insisted on knowing, but I could sense she wasn't happy about it. The job was fine when I was paying for her college and renting an apartment to raise the kids, but now I feel like I'm becoming a burden to her. I hate going to social events. Emma is a great teacher. She makes more money than me and has better benefits. Her union-provided health insurance covers the entire family's expenses. She also has a nice pension while I only have Social Security. Despite being only 150 centimeters tall, she is well-maintained and always impresses. I think it's all thanks to her short-cut platinum blonde hair. I hovered outside, waiting for her to leave. When she finally went out, she was wearing a lovely red dress. She looks great in this dress. I keep telling her that. But it's an odd choice for a doctor's visit. The doctor's office is not in the motel. Emma pulled up and walked straight to room 117, knocked twice and went in. That's all the evidence I need to see to confirm my suspicions. The young receptionist was happy to exchange $100 for a registration card. I recognized the name, but couldn't recall the face. Alexander Foster was at a couple of events that Emma dragged me to, and he had some sort of relationship with the school board or the school district. I can't remember exactly which. Alexander drives a BMW and it's unlocked. It only took me a minute to get his papers out of the glove compartment. The car was registered to Alexander and Catherine Foster, who lived at 321 David Road in Lancaster. That caught my attention, and I remembered that he was a member of the Lancaster School District Board. Turns out he's still a married man. That was the highlight of my day. I wandered aimlessly around town for a couple hours before heading home. Emma was still there when we got home, giddy as usual. She had taken off the red dress. Instead of spending the night at home that night, I slept in my truck in the back of the warehouse of the company I subcontracted work for. I'm still sweating from mowing the lawn late at night, but I don't care. I really want a cup of coffee, and it would be perfect with egg toast. I'm just waiting for the time to pass so I can make sure Emma has left before I go home. There's nothing in the house that I particularly hold on to. I put all my clothes in a garbage bag and took out some more papers I thought I should take with me, birth certificates, passports, and such. I made a quick phone call. Catherine Foster? Yes. I'm Oliver Baker. We've met a couple times at some school functions. I don't remember. What do you want? I just wanted to let you know that your husband Alexander had a rendezvous with my wife Emma at a motel yesterday afternoon. There was silence on the other end of the line. I waited for a response, but didn't get one. That's all, Mrs. Foster. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but I can't just bury it inside. Bye. 10 minutes later, I was driving to Colorado to visit my Uncle George. I don't want to leave the kids, but they're cheerful and Emma can take better care of them than I can. She makes more money than I do, and aside from the point of marital fidelity, she's a better parent. I didn't leave any notes or anything like that. I'm sure she'll realize what happened when she sees all my clothes are gone. The kids got out of school at 3, so I called William about 10 minutes after that. He has a cell phone that can receive incoming calls, but can only dial a few preset numbers. We think that's appropriate. William, it's Dad. Hey, are you on your way home? I just wanted to let you know that I moved out today. I'm going to Colorado to stay with Uncle George for a while. I feel the need to tell you what happened with Daniel. What are you talking about? Why are you moving out? William, from my point of view, the easiest and most considerate answer would be to suggest that you ask your mother. Coming from me, it will only seem like an excuse. Your mom decided she wanted a change. I think she's looking for someone with a better job or position. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but in any case, it seems I'm not good enough anymore. I'm going away for a while so she can figure out what she wants to do. I'll call you as often as I can. If I remember correctly, Uncle George can't get a cell phone signal there. Come on, Dad. Can't you guys figure it out? Can't we go do some counseling or something? It's not for me, son. Listen, your mom has a good job and will have no problem taking care of you guys. I'll try to call you guys on the weekends. By the way, don't tell your mom where I am or that I called you. Take care of Daniel and try to stay calm. Bye. Bye. I just got into Illinois. Uncle George lives north of Lampasas, which is more like New Mexico than Colorado. I don't know how he makes a living or where he gets his money from, but he doesn't seem to have any financial problems. He was married once, but kicked his wife out when he found out she was cheating on him. When I explained my situation to him, he showed understanding. He invited me to stay as long as I wanted and was happy to have me as a companion. George has a lot of land, but it doesn't look like it's suitable for anything. The terrain is too rugged for farming and too sparse for grazing. In addition to the main house, there are several barns and cattle pens. He had a lot of horses, which I later realized were for people to ride. People would come and ride on weekends, usually only in the summer. The weather is not so good the rest of the year. Sunday afternoon, we went to Trinidad to get dinner and some essentials I had forgotten to bring. I finally got a signal on my cell phone, so I called William. Son, I just wanted to let you know that I arrived safely. Are you okay? Not so good, Dad. I told Daniel everything, and he's mad at Mom and won't talk to her. Mom won't tell us what happened. She says she doesn't know why you left. I've tried a couple times to get her to say something, but she always keeps her mouth shut. Daniel and I try to avoid her. Sounds like you handled it well. I'm sorry about this mess. Just do your best. I can't get a signal there at the ranch, but George has a landline and I'll try to call from there. Is there anything I can do to help you guys? We'll be fine, Dad. George's house has an interesting feature. Every building is in desperate need of stucco. I don't know how long he's lived here, but I bet the whole ranch doesn't even have a paintbrush. At least I thought I could repay him for taking me in by doing something useful. There is a co-op nearby and I bought all 25 liters of their red oxide paint. Of course, they were credited to George. The weather is still good for a couple months, and I hope to finish painting most of the outbuildings. The main house will have to wait until spring. For the next 2 weekends, I was unable to reach William on his cell phone and I began to worry. Another 2 weeks passed and still no word from the kids. It's been over a month and I thought I gave Uncle William George's landline number, but now I'm not so sure. After being out of touch for over a month, they finally called. Dad, it's William. Daniel and I are in Santa Fe, and we need you to pick us up. What were you doing in Santa Fe? How did you get there? I can't talk much right now. I borrowed a guy's cell phone and promised him I wouldn't use it for long. We're in the Sky Blue terminal. How soon can you get there? It'll take at least a couple hours. Let's get something to eat first, and we'll be on our way. 2 hours later, the kids were in the back seat of the car as we traveled north. They didn't bring any luggage. Daniel fell asleep quickly. I tried asking a couple times. William, what happened to your cell phone? Mom found out you were calling me, and she got so mad she smashed the phone with a rolling pin. I was going to call the home number you gave me, but I decided to wait. I don't know why, maybe in the hope that things will get better. Since you're here, I'm guessing things aren't getting any better? About a month ago, Mom started going out at night. She didn't come home until after midnight and was always drunk. Sometimes she doesn't even get up to go to work and doesn't even bother to call in her vacation. Is she alone? At first, yes. Then one night, about a week later, she brought a man home. They all got really drunk and went straight to Mom's room and started making a lot of noise. You know what I mean. I see what you mean. What happened then? About an hour later, Daniel and I went out to let the air out of his wheel tires. We crossed the street to Mr. Simpson's house, and he let us sleep in the guest room. Mr. Simpson watched with us as the man came out the next morning. He was furious, and it took the mechanic over an hour to get there and fix all the tires. Mom stood on the porch in her robe for a while. We went straight to school. When I got home that day, Mom didn't say a word about it. Does this happen often? It only happened once. The next night, she brought another man home, and this time we simply cut the valve core. He had to call a tow truck. He's really angry. Mr. Simpson found it particularly funny. She never brought a man home after that. Looks like you guys handled it pretty well. She continues to go out, completely immersed in her own world, and usually doesn't return until the next morning. Sometimes she drove herself home. Sometimes the men drove her back. By the way, there's another strange thing I almost forgot to mention. She bought 5 or 6 red dresses and wears one every time she goes out. At least Daniel and I can sleep and eat at home. The school and the school district call a lot to see where she is, and most of the time she's sleeping. She was kind of fired a couple days ago. They can't officially fire her because of union rules, but they won't let her come back to work. I'm not quite sure exactly what's going on. I'm sorry about all this. If I'd known this was going to happen, I never would have left you guys. So how did you guys get here? Last night around midnight, a man kicked her out of the car. She climbed onto the porch and passed out. We don't know if she's dead or what. Her dress is ripped and she looks awful. That's when I decided it was time to leave. I told Daniel to call 911 and took a card from her wallet. I went to the computer and booked a flight from Philadelphia to Santa Fe and left my ticket at the counter. I'm not sure they're going to give tickets to 2 kids. I almost bought a ticket to Denver, but ended up changing my mind. Everything seems to be going well. I'm guessing you guys are doing well on your feet? The ambulance came, and one of the guys called the police as soon as he saw Mom. The police arrived as they were carrying Mom into the ambulance. Dad. They asked a lot of questions, especially about the car that brought her back, but we don't know much about it. After a while, we were approached by a female officer who was from Family Services. She asked where you were, and I told her you were in Colorado and that you sent us airfare. I put on my saddest face and told her we had no way to get to the airport and needed an adult to help us through security. She made a few phone calls and finally took us to the ticket counter. I think it was an easy solution for her, and it went well for us. Once the kids were settled, George and I talked until midnight about the situation. I thought Emma would start divorce proceedings after I left, but it seems I was wrong. Of course, I never thought she'd be a mess. I think she had a lot of unfulfilled desires, and when given the opportunity to express them, she gladly took it. I'm not very good at understanding why people do certain things. George didn't have a computer, so I had to use his phone the next morning. Eventually, I found a lawyer in Reading who was willing to prepare my divorce papers. When I mentioned Emma's name, he made it clear that he was aware of her situation. I think these lawyers are usually aware of what goes on in police stations. He said her behavior over the past few weeks could easily be documented, which would simplify the divorce process. I had to send a money order for $2,000 to my attorney, which caught me a little off guard. but Uncle George promised financial support if needed. The attorney suggested that since Emma's income is higher than mine, he would try to get child support from her. Of course, now that she's lost her job, this gets complicated. I had to contact the boys' school, and they showed great understanding of the situation. I think everyone in the school system knows about my dear wife's travesty. They agreed to send all school records, even copies of birth certificates, without question. I told the kids they could relax until the paperwork arrived. The next few months went well. Emma signed divorce papers, but no child support. She lost her teaching license and had to find another job. I don't know what she ended up doing, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been as decent as her teaching position. I only have to wait 3 more months. William and Daniel are both doing well at their new school. Every morning they eagerly went to the bus stop and George and I refused to drive them. We tell them it's a way to build character. There has to be some sunshine in life, and I guess I kind of embellished that statement. I mean, sooner or later good things happen to everyone. For me, this happened in the last week of May. George asked me to deliver 2 horses to a man in Cloudcroft, about a 5-hour drive. I left early and hoped to return the same day. This part of the program is not going well. Delivery was no problem. I never like hauling an empty trailer, but it was necessary. About 10 minutes away from Alamogordo, I hit a roadblock. A truck loaded with illegal immigrants overturned and all law enforcement and border patrol came to the area. They are checking every vehicle, especially trailers and trucks. I never did figure out exactly what happened, but as I passed through the checkpoint, I desperately needed to use the restroom. About a mile away, I stopped by a billboard and finally felt relieved. But the thing is, I have an audience. I went back to the truck and got 2 bottles of water out of the fridge. The older one grabbed the water and handed a bottle to the little girl who was about 4 years old. The older one looked to be in his 20s. They were dirty, tired, thirsty, and hungry. I could tell they were scared, so I didn't say anything. The older girl had long dark hair, thick eyebrows, dark eyes, and a golden complexion. The little girl is a smaller version of her. I turned to the truck and signaled them to follow me. I know it's illegal, but I don't care. They hesitated, but cautiously made their way to the passenger door. The older one never took his eyes off me. We drove for about an hour before we needed to refuel. Before filling up, I pointed out the restroom next to the gas station. They managed to get in and out of the ladies' restroom before I finished filling up. When I paid the bill, I got a couple pre-made sandwiches and 2 Cokes. I guessed right, they were as hungry as they were thirsty. In Las Vegas, New Mexico, there is a large supermarket. I decided to stop there before getting on the highway to the pass. As I approached the greeter, my 2 guests followed close behind. Soon I had a shopping assistant, an older woman who spoke Mexican. I'd say it's more accurate to say she speaks Spanish, but as far as I know, there's a difference. I quickly explained what I needed, and we went straight to the children's department. Within 15 minutes, we had collected a great set of underwear, pants, shirts, and socks for the little girl. Older girls, or women, spent more time. I kept my distance from the little girls as they picked out their panties, bras, and everyday clothes. Then we went to the shoe department and got comfortable sneakers for both of them. Our last stop was the health and beauty section where we picked up toothbrushes, combs, and some feminine products. She seemed embarrassed about that last purchase, but took it. I thanked the clerk who helped with the shopping, and she smiled and hugged me. I don't think that's standard procedure. The bill was less than $200, so I was happy. I decided to spend the night. It's been a long day, and I think these ladies could use a warm shower and a soft bed. I rented a room with 2 beds. We laid out all the new clothes on the bed, and before we left, I pointed them to the shower. I called George, and he advised me not to rush back. I didn't mention my passenger. We won't know until tomorrow if he needs a cook and a housekeeper, but he's planning to hire someone anyway. I can't help but smile to myself. After about an hour, I decided it was time to head back. I ordered a full dinner for 3. When I returned to my room, they were clean and fresh. My name is Oliver. Hearing that little introduction and the smile she responded with made it worth every penny I spent. Isabel, she pointed to herself and said, smiling again, pointing to the little girl, Sophia. Then she pointed at me and said, Oliver. Gosh, it feels like a comedic version of an old Tarzan movie. I couldn't help but laugh, and a few seconds later, all 3 of us started wolfing down our dinner. The chicken and sides disappeared quickly, and by then I was as hungry as they were. Of course, we have nothing to talk about. After eating, I pointed to one of the beds and laid myself down on the other. I thought about taking a shower, but decided to forget it. I slept in my clothes on top of the covers. Isabel seems to appreciate that. She and Sophia slept in their new clothes. Since I didn't want to go to a restaurant, the next morning I got a couple McMansions for breakfast from a fast food place. We made it back to the ranch before noon. George doesn't think it's a big deal. The ranch house had plenty of room, so there was no problem finding accommodations for Isabel and Sophia. George speaks a little Spanish and soon learns that Sophia is Isabel's daughter and that her husband has died. When the truck overturned, she was trying to get to Alabama to find her brother who was a stonemason there. Most people stayed put, and Isabel decided it was best to leave the scene. I think it was the right decision for her. George prepared lunch for all of us and told Isabel that from now on she was going to cook for herself. She seemed to like the idea, and so did I. George isn't a very good cook. When the kids came home from school, they looked happy to see Isabel. They were very pleased with the dinner she made for us. I don't know what that dish was called, but it was delicious. She gave George a list in Spanish of the groceries she needed in the kitchen. That won't be a problem in Trinidad. Looks like I need to learn some Spanish and teach her English at the same time. I could teach her words, but her grammar would probably be as bad as mine. Isabel quickly adapted to the daily routine. She does the laundry, cleans, cooks, and manages the entire household. George is glad he doesn't have to do this anymore, and her English is improving rapidly. Now I understand where the word Spanglish comes from. By mixing the two languages, she learned to express herself well. Since Sophia spends a lot of time with the boys and watches TV, she learns much faster than her mom. Sometimes she had to explain things to Isabel, which helped her mother. Sophia will be starting school next year, and we are excited to see how well she is progressing. My divorce from Emma is finally final. A few days later, she sent several boxes containing the children's clothes and other items, including the original birth certificates. There's nothing in the box for me. No note, no letter, nothing. I was curious about what she was doing, but not enough to ask. Isabel asked George why I was so happy, and he explained it to her in Spanish, and she left the room with a big smile on her face. I think that's a good sign. Because Isabel had her brother's address and cell phone number, she was able to call him. While he regretted not being able to see her, he was glad she was safe. The call seemed to help her feel more settled. The boys are becoming experts at driving horses. After everything was painted, we spent a lot of time landscaping the house. We did something George never had time to do. No longer just a rundown old cowboy ranch, this place is starting to look more like a vacation destination. Several people who board horses here in George asked if they could stay at the ranch instead of the motel in town. We have a lot of empty rooms, and Isabel thought it would be nice if she could help. She said this with a light laugh, but George really thought it was a good idea. Price includes breakfast and dinner with ranch hands and room. George had to obtain permits and install fire safety equipment, but within a month Isabel had her own bed and breakfast business. A few weeks later, a small article about the ranch appeared in the Santa Fe newspaper, and before you knew it, Lazy George Ranch was a popular destination for tourists. George had to buy more horses so the tourists would have horses to ride. He also had to buy a computer, which the boys quickly set up. Thank goodness there is TV and satellite internet service. Business slowed down a little in the winter, and George added 4 more rooms to the house. Isabel bought a new Viking stove, and William got his driving license. I spent a lot of time painting, sanding, staining, just working. I'm glad George and the boys handled most of the horse-related work. At night, the boys work on the ranch's website. Daniel has reserved a dining room table for next spring and is also teaching Sophia to read. We had to open accounts with all the major credit card companies. During the off-season, we all get busy and start worrying about next year. Isabel sits next to me whenever she can. We don't talk much, but it's always nice to have her around. She made sure I always had coffee or whatever I wanted to drink at the time. We've gotten better at communicating, but I'm a slow learner and a bit awkward in conversation. William tried a few times to push me to be more friendly with Isabel, but I didn't do a very good job of it. Just before Christmas, she made the decision for me. Oliver, I think it's time for Sophia to have her own bed in her own room. Do you agree? I think so, yes. We should have done this earlier. Good. I'm glad you think so. I'm going to move my stuff to your room today, but I need a closet. Can you move the second closet from your uncle's room to yours? It's too heavy for me. Of course I can move it for you, Isabel. I don't want to offend you, but my room only has one bed. It's okay, don't worry. I don't take up much room. I was surprised at how well she spoke English. I think some parts of this conversation may have been planned in advance. I suspect either my hospitable hosts or my nosy sons. In any case, she made her point and I felt flattered. I was very careful not to do anything that might offend her or make her feel like I was taking advantage of her situation. I think she understands that herself. I'd love to impress you with some story about how I wonderfully wooed Isabel and convinced her to be my wife, but I can't. I think I was in love with her from the first time I saw her, but I couldn't admit it to her or to myself. It was a relief to learn that she felt the same way and had the courage to do what I couldn't. We got married on Christmas Day. Only family and a few local friends attended. The second year was a wonderful one for the Lazy George Ranch. We had too many reservations and had to turn some down. Isabel hires a young girl to help in the kitchen and William takes an interest in her. I think that's a good sign. Sadly, George passed away at the end of the summer. He left everything to Isabel and me, not just the ranch, but mineral rights worth over $1 million. The boys are doing well and Sophia is thriving. Life is good. It was cold and damp when Emma left the Palmer Candy Factory. She had just finished her midnight to 8 a.m. shift, working to put eyes on chocolate Easter bunnies. A large bag in one hand and a paycheck envelope in the other. As she walked into the local diner for breakfast, she pulled an Old People magazine out of her purse for the 100th time, and it automatically flipped to page 48. She stirred cream into her coffee and gazed at a photograph. Her youngest son, Daniel, was helping Julia Roberts mount a golden horse. On the next page, Oliver Baker, owner of the Lazy George Ranch, and his wife Isabel stand on the porch of their beautiful ranch house next to Cameron Diaz. Before finishing her breakfast, she would read the entire article as she did every week. After putting the magazine down, she checked to make sure she had enough money. The thrift store will open in 20 minutes. Maybe this will be a lucky week. Although Emma already has 16 red dresses, she always feels like she needs another one. No amount of red dresses is too much. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.